everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel, and I'm with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine Astrology.
And we're here today to give you purpose and inspiration and guidance for this week's upcoming transits. We'll be talking about real-life examples of what to expect in this week's astrology, so that you're on the lookout for things as they come your way.
Yes, and I will review a variety of different aspects and things that are happening this week, and we encourage you to listen to what resonates with you most. As one of my favorite teachers says, if it's not in your natal chart, it's not going to happen. So we're really just sharing possibilities, and depending on what is in your personal makeup, that's what's in your birth chart and what is actually happening in your life right now. Certain things will resonate with you more than others, and certain things will influence you more than others. So we encourage you to take what resonates most and what's most helpful, and then just leave the rest.
Yes, let your intuition be the guide, because if something sticks out to you, that's probably of notable interest. So just jot that down and take a good look into that. So let's see what's happening this week. We're in the week of June 5th through June 11th, and this is our third episode, which we have titled A Return to Faith. And we've got a lot of faith-building aspects going on here, but let's just run over what the some little things that we have in store for the week, just so you can set your emotional compass. So the moon path is going to be on Tuesday. We'll have a Scorpio moon, where the emotions might be a little more intense, a little more brooding, and then we'll lighten it up a little bit on Wednesday when the moon goes into Sagittarius, which we'll go into more detail in this podcast. And then on Saturday, the moon will move to the stoic sign of Capricorn, where we will have more earth energy and be able to get some things done and be a little more practical about how the week has transpired. And also of notable interest, on Tuesday, June 6th, Venus will be moving into Taurus, as well as Mercury, who will be moving into Gemini, which both of these planets are going to be moving into their ruling signs. So they will be of a much stronger position than they've been recently. And we can finally celebrate Venus getting out of Aries, because it's been there forever. Amen. So let's all congratulate Venus on her move to Taurus and Mercury to Gemini. So Shawna, bring us in with some the real meat of the transits and what we're going to be talking about here today.
So today we will talk about three major aspects, and these will be the full moon in Sagittarius, which is on the 9th. We're calling a higher vision, very Sagittarian, and this also lends itself to the moon transits that you were talking about too, Mel, because this whole week, because the full moon lands on a Friday, it really has that building effect and this vibe of growing and things becoming to feel more intense. So we'll get into that. We'll also talk about Jupiter stationing direct, which we're calling a return to faith. And thirdly, we'll talk about Venus sextile Mars, which is important because of the transitioning of Venus, as you spoke about. And we're calling this Act Your Heart Out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those planets are going to be in early degrees, because Mars has just moved into Cancer as well last week, and we are now getting situated with that energy. Mm-hmm. So some exciting things coming up. I'm very excited for our topics that we have to talk about today. Who doesn't love a full moon? So let's just kick right into that full moon in Sagittarius, which we are deeming a higher vision. And that full moon is going to be exact on Friday, June 9th at 6:10 a.m. Pacific time. So chances are you'll probably feel it bubbling up the Thursday night before, or you might have some crazy dreams that morning or that night, because a lot of times the moon will trigger our dream cycles, so pay attention to that. So Shawna, tell us the quote you have for the full moon in Sagittarius.
So this quote is, I'm going to butcher her last name, but it's by Malala Yousafzai, I think it is. And the quote goes, "One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world." And I love this so much for the full moon in Sagittarius because it speaks to this optimism and this faith and this spark of inspiration that Sagittarius brings to life, that just one thing, just one idea, just one bit of enthusiasm can really change things. And especially this full moon with the loose conjunction to Saturn, I think it really speaks to that as well. To one practical item can really change the world.
Yes, and I absolutely love her. Like, her story, can we talk about amazing? And she's 20 years old. She is, and little tidbit, I don't know if you realize this, but she shares your birthday.
What?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes, I thought that was pretty cool. So no wonder you resonate with her words. But yes, talk about inspiration. She's an inspiration just being alive. Beyond this one quote, if you are not familiar with Malala, she has a book out. I believe it's called I Am Malala, right? I think. Should definitely check that out because she is of great inspiration for us all and how we all could maybe contribute to the world and speak our truth. Speaking of Sagittarius, which is all about speaking the truth. So yes, Shawna was saying with the aspects, the moon is in a wide conjunction with Saturn. And it is, what is it, like 5 degrees, something like that. But it is an approaching aspect, so it will be building, and it's going to be the first aspect that happens once the moon goes full afterwards. A couple other things to look at with connections to this full moon is that the sun, which will be in opposition to the moon at 18 degrees Gemini, is also in an exact inconjunct with Pluto, who is also at 18 degrees Capricorn. So there is a Plutonian vibe to this in an adjustment way, which we'll touch on a little bit later. There's also a loose separating T-square with that Neptune in Pisces, which we discussed last week. So that action is still in play too. We've got a grand fire trine, and it's the moon's ruler, which we'll talk about a little bit, is going to go direct. So basically what I'm saying here is there's a lot of energy this day. This is what makes things so great and grand in a Jupiterian way, is that all these planets are talking to each other. So let's talk about what a full moon is to begin with. What can we expect at this time, regardless of sign? Like, how does a full moon operate? It's a time of release, so that we can, it's a time of culmination and a release. It's kind of like a new beginning, like the new moon, but in a different way. It's a new beginning to kick off the waning cycle where we've been growing and waxing this whole time. We've hit the top of the mountain, and now we kind of cruise control back down to the new moon. Do you have any insight to share about the new full moon, Shawna, and how it works?
And I really love the full moon as a time of celebration, and I think that we've lost this idea a little bit because I see for a few different reasons. Because number one, first, the full moon for a lot of people feels really intense, like emotionally intense, and I noticed that a lot of people will feel the buildup about 2 days before, and then the day of the actual full moon does have this feeling of release from all of that pressure. And in ancient times, people used to use the full moon as a time of celebrating the fruits of their labor. So whatever it is that you started during the new moon, everything that you've been working towards, there's something that you have based on all of your efforts. And so I think it's a really beautiful time to look at all of the good things in your life and look at where things are working or where you've gotten something for what it is that you've done. That being said, it is a pivot point. So it's a point where the energy shifts from moving outward because we've been waxing and growing and doing and moving out into the world. When the full moon happens, there's a shift and there's a pivot. And so it moves more from engagement in the world, and then it shifts to moving inward. It shifts to being more reflective and saying, okay, now what am I going to do with all of these things that I've created? The full moon ultimately is a time of being enmeshed in the material world. And then you get to decide, what to do with that, for better or worse.
It's true, because like you were saying, with the waxing energy and putting more of an outward energy, and in turn, outward energies actually affect us during this time, and that which kind of prods us to grow towards the full moon. So, full moons, I love the idea of celebration because there is a fulfillment to it. But at the same time, you have to have done the work in the waxing phase to see that fulfillment. So if if you spend that first 2 weeks in a positive, growth-oriented mind, you're going to have illumination and revelation, and you will see that fulfillment and celebration. But if you've had any type of hesitancy or negativity, especially during the first quarter phase when we're really starting to feel those challenges, and if it's not dealt with, a lot of times it can bring on like a mental dilemma of some sort or some type of destructive conflict. And that's why you see the hospitals get all crazy with, on the full moon, and people do kind of silly things. So it just depends on the energy that you're putting into the cycle, and really tackling those challenges as they come to you and taking action around them so that you can have that celebration in the full moon.
Yeah. And one thing that I remember a while ago, you and I were talking about, Mel, outside the podcast, is that proactive self-awareness is so key for how you experience the full moon. Because I've noticed with myself and then other people that, I've talked to as well, that the more that a person is really self-aware of the emotions that are coming up for them, situations and challenges that come up that mean something about their behavior, the more that you are aware of yourself, the easier you're going to have. The easier typically this time, because, the moon in astrology, it represents intuition and emotions, and it represents instinctual patterns. And I really love this idea of the moon being your unconscious, and then when you become conscious of it, it actually becomes intuition. And so the full moon is this time of illuminating your unconscious. And the more aware you are, the more that you're working through your unconscious patterns and your emotions, the more it's not as big of a deal. If you're not running away from yourself, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm feeling the feelings and they're coming up, and it's not a big deal. But if you're constantly pushing things down, it's going to be more dramatic during the full moon when they come up. So the more that we can, especially in the days leading up to the full moon, I would totally recommend journaling, more meditation, more self-reflection. That's it's going to make things easier for you, but it's also going to reveal a lot more. So these dreams that you're speaking of, Mel, and intuitions, that's going to flow, and it's going to be more clear on what everything means as this time comes up.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what a full moon is. It's a reflection. It's it's the point where we can see at night, where it's lit up the most, that we can look into, not only the moon's light, but our own light and what is being reflected there. Because let's not forget, it's an opposition, and oppositions are usually some type of reflection back to you, either by another or some type of situation outside of yourself or your shadow self. There is the dark side of the moon, even when it's fully, we only see one side. So keep that in mind. But let's get on to talking about the full moon happening in Sagittarius. In Sagittarius, so we got basically the sun and the moon sitting at Gemini and Sagittarius. So I'm going to go ahead and say that anybody that's a mutable sign, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, might feel this a little bit more, especially if you have any planets around 18 degrees or so. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be, Sagittarius is a restless energy. There's change in the air. There's a sense of spontaneity and adventure, adventure that will come up at this time. Gemini and Sag are all about, concepts versus experience and your own belief systems. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. But chances are the political arena is going to be pretty charged at this time. And I know that we're here for self-development, but when the world around us is having its own, battles of belief, it kind of affects our own inner balance. And that's another thing with oppositions is it's all about finding a balance. So just be aware if you see things outside of you at this time, don't jump into them too much because Sagittarius is likes to fight for what's right, or what they perceive to be right. So just know that this energy that in the couple days leading up before it, we could see a lot of restlessness in the political arena. So don't let that trigger you too much. No, that's part of the energy that's right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing that comes to mind too with this energy is I always think of the full moon balancing out the shadow side of the new moon energy. So in this case, it would be Gemini. We had the new moon in Gemini. And the shadow side of Gemini is looking outside of yourself for answers. And so Sagittarius helps Gemini in that way because Sagittarius has this intuition. There is this inner knowing. There is a conviction on what is right morally, what is right spiritually, and the path. But then at the same time, of course, we have to be careful going either way. The shadow side of Sagittarius is to be righteous and to be like, this is the way, and I know the answer. And what I like to think of as the soapbox syndrome, where you get up on your soapbox and you tell everyone this is the way and I have all of the answers. And so it'll be interesting to see if any of that comes up either on the inside for listeners or out in the public arena. Yeah. I think that's something to watch for as well. You'll know what your tendency is. Do you look outside of yourself for answers and always ask everyone what you should do? Or are you always up on that goddamn soapbox and being like, this is what I think when you should listen a little bit more? And, I'm guilty of both a little bit.
Oh, we all are in some area of life.
Yeah. So I would just notice, how that comes up for you this week, especially in the days leading up, like, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, especially how those kinds of situations come up for you.
Exactly. Try to stay off the soapbox. Just step down for a second and, inject what is a Sagittarian strength, and that's humor. Sagittarius are funny as hell. A Sagittarius walks in a room and the party just gets lit. That's the way it goes, They have that joyful energy, and can, have this very, kind of even crass type of humor because they're so, blunt and down to the point. So rather than, kind of having what Shawna was saying with that righteousness and blah, blah, maybe you do have a point to share, but inject some humor into it because no one really wants to be told what to do, no matter if what you're saying is right. You have to learn about your approach. And one of the best ways to approach other people, especially if you're in any type of, conflict or you have a message that might not necessarily resonates with you but not necessarily someone else, is try to find that humor in that and communicate it from a lighter side rather than getting so pumped up on your own on that soapbox. So Because it is the preacher's moon, you know. It's you got to just be aware of if there's any areas that you might be being a little dogmatic, or you know, or you act like you have all the answers, type of thing. So it's just a little hot spot to be aware of. But on the upside, we have Sagittarius, which is all about spiritual and a higher aspect of yourself and developing your own philosophy. So this is a perfect time for our own emotions to get wrapped around what philosophy we have. We've been building this philosophy for so long with Saturn and Sagittarius and all those, the Uranus trying to it. Saturn's just been building. We've been restructuring our life's philosophies. So I think this is going to be a very emotional time inside, to where we can kind of really start wrapping around our own beliefs and our own spiritual aspect of ourselves, you know.
I love that because it is like even though Saturn is already a mature energy in itself, the place where Saturn is at now in Sagittarius is at the very tail end of the sign. So it is like a mature Saturn. So yeah, I can see how the full moon would really, it would enhance all of these things that we've been learning around Sagittarian matters of spiritual study and what is the meaning of life, and having a higher vision and all of these things.
I mean, we deemed this transit a higher vision. So how can you go higher? You know, because what you need to what we probably all need to do is like gain detachment, in a sense, in perspective on our own feelings. Because once again, we're talking about the moon, and this could be a time of a test of faith in some sort, But we, like Shawna was just saying, where it's at the end degrees, we've been working on this a while. This is not a new thing. We are coming to the end degrees. Keep in mind, Saturn is also retrograde, so there's a lot of, once again, we're back to this inner work. Inner structuring, inner restructuring. So this is the perfect time to really just get around your own emotional honesty. Like, really get honest and kind of blunt with yourself. Because if you step into your own truth and your own emotional truth at this time, you're going to see a path to freedom kind of start to pave its way for you within your own restructuring of beliefs and developing a higher faith in what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the tarot cards for this particular transit, because I think they really lend well to all of the things that we're talking about.
Yes.
Will you share those with us, Mel?
Okay, so for the full moon tarot, I've got 5 of Swords as the focus, and then the Mother of Swords, or Queen of Swords, depending on what deck you're using, as the grounding. And here we got the 5 of Swords. 5 of Swords again here. 5 of Swords, okay, so we're talking about Gemini and Sagittarius. And the 5 of Swords is really kind of directing us that we might be lured into some type of argument at this time, like some type of ideological competition. And I mean, that's going on in the world right now. I mean, we've seen it. The world today is struggling with these issues. And in turn, we participate in that as well. So just know that during this full moon, whether you're above board, realize that even if you've done the work and you're aware and you're above board, there's always someone who hasn't. And we're all sensitive creatures, especially when the moon's involved, so you might be triggered at this time. Even the best of us that have done the work can still be triggered by things that, especially if it comes from an emotional place, that we'll erupt with. So just know that there could be some type of disruptive event or a stimulation-seeking behavior of some sort that kind of challenges you in a way. And it's going to be okay to walk away from that. It's better to surrender and allow defeat than to fight a useless point, because it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. So Yeah. So
yeah, and I think too, a big part of this, what comes to mind as you're speaking, Mel, is sometimes the trigger is the work. And I think that's why in astrology, we have the conjunctions and then we have the oppositions. And the conjunctions, it's like, oh, this is great. Things are coming together. But the oppositions, the whole point is to work something out. And I think that, the full moon is a perfect representation of that. And the tarot cards really talk about this. Like, yeah, there's a conflict and that's okay. And how can we find a way to be balanced and to maintain integrity through triggers and through conflicts, and to handle things in a way that honors what's right, that honors what is just in whatever way that looks for you.
Exactly, because we have to keep in mind that the full moon ruler is Jupiter, who will be going direct that day, which we'll talk about, and it's going to be in a very, very, very strong position. When anything's stationary, it is strong. And once again, it's in Libra, which Libra is not always, the Libra's funny because it can be very, it can be argumentative, or it can totally avoid arguments. So the thing is that I think the upside to this energy is actually learning conflict management and knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Because ultimately, if we believe something and someone else doesn't, but we live our lives in that integrity, and we walk away from that, and we just exist in our own strength of belief, we're already changing the world that way. We don't have to pointlessly argue with someone who is not going to see everything that's going to happen. Is you're just going to get riled up. You're going to feel a little out of control. You're going to it's just, yes. So unless you can see, once again, inject that humor. If you want to spar with someone in a playful back and forth of ideological comparison, add in some humor and try to relate to that person. So conflict's not necessarily a bad thing, as Shawna was saying. It's just it has to be approached the right way so that it's constructive. Because if it's deconstructive, then it's just wasting your own energy. And it's wasting the energy of the other person, and it's pointless. And especially with that Mother of Swords there, it's just aggressive intellect right now, and people are using their own, critical logic. Like they are, the logic is then paired with the emotions. So, and those two things together, when you're emotionally behind your own logical conclusion, whether it's right or wrong, you're gonna push that point, aren't you? So I just want to point out real quickly about when we're talking about the Sun in conjunct Pluto that day on that 18 degrees. With the Sun in conjunct. So basically, what an inconjunct is it's one of those aspects that the two signs that are talking together just are so far apart. They're out of the same. They're not in the same element. They're not in the same modality. They're like just totally different. And so usually there's some type of adjustment that needs to be made. So I would say in this situation that I would watch for areas where you might want to control or manipulate a conversation, or if you see other people doing that to you, just be aware that might be a trigger, and how can you approach that a little differently and adjust your own response to those outside triggers, because there could be some, a little bit of power struggles around belief, or, there's some type of pressure building in that area. So just know that this might be a time where it's kind of better to let go and compromise and stick with your own integrity and your own truth and just walk in that silently than to go ahead and just argue that point. So that's what I would have to say about this.
Yeah, and I think it is important because it's Pluto and the Sun, and the biggest takeaway for an aspect like that. The quincunx is compromise. But that gets tricky when Pluto's involved because Pluto does not fucking want any compromises. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we feel. And what's really fascinating to me with all of this is the tarot cards are both they're both sword cards, which is the swords are about communication, mind, and intellect. And this is a full moon, which is about emotion. So it's kind of like this blend of saying what's so, and then knowing when to say and when to hold back. And then the in conjunct with Pluto in Capricorn, it's like, okay, how do we navigate through who has the power, who doesn't, saying what needs to be said to be authentic, and then when to hold that and to know and to not say. So it's really like this balancing act between all of these energies, between emotion and intellect and saying and not saying. And could be quite intense.
It's true because, the swords are about all those things, because it does relate to the air quality. But in typical, classic tarot, it represents conflict. It's conflict of the mind, whether it's internal, outside of us, etc. So there's some type of conflict here, and we're just sort of ferreting that out. But I find it interesting with this 18 degrees because I always love to look at degrees because it kind of pinpoints things and just kind of has a spotlight that gives a little food for thought. And I love referring back to Christopher Witecki's step system. And for 18 degrees, the step would be, my heart decides and I act. Well, that can go one of two ways. And that could be, as we're saying, with this higher vision, where the heart decides, and now I'm on the right, because we're building our own journey here with Sagittarius. We're building our own purpose, essentially, with Saturn. Saturn is whipping our own purpose into shape. So we might be seeing areas where our heart is on board and we are ready to just act, and we've decided and we're ready to act. And then back to this conflict type of energy is sometimes your heart has decided and it's acting. My heart's behind this thing. I'm going to fight for it, but it might not be the right time to fight. So just know that acting, that Mars energy, because that's what is that aggressive, thing is, yes, it can get things done and it can propel you forward with, say, your purpose, if your heart's behind that. But if your heart is behind this thing that is, pinpointing other people or going and picking at ideologies and doing this, that, and the other thing, those actions might not be the best at this time. So there's kind of there's two sides to this, as there's two sides to everything in life. Life is duality. So what side are you on? So let's wrap this little segment up with some, what side are you on? Let's talk about these full moon questions. So we just have some questions for you to take away. So you might want to ask yourself during this full moon, do my thoughts and or my long-held beliefs reflect the actual experience of the situation? Is what I'm thinking reflected and experienced in real life, or am I kind of trumping that up to my own way of seeing things? I would also ask, how can I not get lured into pointless arguments? And how can I release the need to be right? Because this can come up at this time, especially with Sagittarius. I would also ask, how can I emotionally connect with a higher perspective? How can I take the high road? Because that's the road you want to be on. It's not worth it to travel that lower path. You're going to see growth in the high road. So the last question I would personally ask would be, how can I gain wisdom from the situations now developing in my life? Sagittarius.
I love that. That's beautiful. Good questions.
Yes. So a little food for thought for us all to take away. And, and Shawna and I, we were just talking about this before we got on the horn with you guys, is, we're not exempt to these things. Just because we know what's going on and can see all this doesn't mean that in the moment we aren't afflicted by this. So just know we're with you. We're with you 100%, feeling this out as it goes.
Yep.
Yeah. Doing our best, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the beauty of astrology is it does make it easier because it brings a context to all of these things, but it doesn't make everything go away, and I think that's why we both love this so much is that it does provide a context in it, and it allows for us to really get in there and to do the work and to work things out in a way where it brings more meaning. And I think that's a lot of what this full moon is about, is bringing more meaning to things. And with Mel, with your reflection questions, I love those because that does bring more meaning into everything that we're doing this week.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, meaning. How do we bring some meaning into our life? Once again, purpose. Let's get on board with this purpose. And speaking of purpose, going forward, we can now segue into Jupiter going direct.
Yay!
So Jupiter, I know, right? And how funny, I don't know if funny is the word, but I'm going to use it, is that Jupiter direct is stationing direct on a Sagittarius full moon, which it rules. Like that, if there isn't celestial timing, my God. That's crazy. So Jupiter will be going, stationing direct, where it will, appear to stop moving. And with retrogrades, it's not, their planet's not actually going backwards, in case any of you don't quite realize how retrogrades work. It's more of an apparent motion in the sky to where our own ecliptic makes it look like the planet's going backwards. So this is kind of a theoretical thing that we see. So when a planet such as Jupiter stations, and it has that moment of stillness, that is when it's in its most power. When it's in that still moment. So just know that this is the key right here to this whole full moon in this week, in my opinion. So Jupiter going direct will be on that Friday, our Freaky Friday, June 9th at 7:04 a.m. Pacific time, and it'll be going direct at 13 degrees Libra. Mm-hmm. And just keep in mind, it has been retrograde since February 6th. So, so Shawna, I'd love to hear your quote, this is actually our title, our title transit, Jupiter station direct, a return to faith. Let's hear your quote.
Yes. So this quote for this Jupiter stationing direct is by poet Emily Dickinson. And she says, "I'm out with lanterns looking for myself." And I love this for this particular transit because Jupiter retrograde is this time of understanding yourself, understanding and revisiting your belief system, your inner faith, and the structure of how it is that you make meaning out of the world. And so it's really cool because there's all of this work that has been done on the inside from February to now, and then we get to take that lantern and move it from the inside to the outside and to share all of these gifts and these awakenings that we've had.
Yes, absolutely. And boy, have I been awakened personally. I don't know about you, but there's been a lot of awakening around your personal own inner faith, especially for me. Because Jupiter represents the superconscious. It's kind of like what is, and that's why it's so expansive and big. It's like this, just beyond comprehensible, no boundaries type of energy. And that's why, it's assigned with Sagittarius, which is also this, don't keep me any type of confinement. I need some freedom. I need to constantly grow and expand. And so we're doing that in Libra. So basically we're going direct in the sign of partnership and the sign of working with other people, and the sign of gaining light into our own shadow self. And as we were talking about with the full moon, is that this is the full moon's ruler in an incredibly powerful position on the full moon, which I'm not 100% sure. I'm like 99% sure, but I'm pretty sure that actually our president, Trump, has Jupiter station in his chart. And that's why he's always kind of going overboard.
Yes.
He does.
I think it's within a day or two, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can see that in him. You see that, that's the thing is Jupiter has this expansive energy, and it really gets us in touch with our own spiritual self and our purpose and our meaning. But it also has this kind of indulgent quality, and it can go overboard. So just know with it being so powerful on Friday and the day leading up and probably the day afterwards, just watch for areas in your life where you could go overboard, especially in the conflict zone, like we were talking about, because Libra, it can be a lawyer. It can debate. That's the thing is Libras either don't want compromise, or excuse me, they don't want to fight, or let me rephrase this here. So Libras are good at compromising. And sometimes they compromise at their own detriment because it's just easier to do so. Mm-hmm. But also, Libras, on the downside of things, can kind of be assholes. Not gonna lie. They can be jerks, and they'll fight a point until it's beaten to death, or until you're on that side. So just know that this Jupiter direct in this moment, because keep in mind, this is something that's going to be happening until it goes, the whole year is going to be Jupiter direct. So this little incident I'm talking about right now, it's just in this moment, all around these days, because it going direct has kind of a different meaning in our life than its power in that particular moment. Mm-hmm. So I'm just touching this back in line with how we can kind of stay out of that conflict and not go overboard in that area.
Yeah, and looking at the bigger picture of this too, I think that it really depends on what a person's natural tendencies are, especially in the sign of Libra. So anything that Jupiter touches, it magnifies. And to make this more personal, anywhere that Jupiter is in your chart is going to be magnified. And so, if you know your chart, I would pay extra attention to that as well, while it's at this 13 degrees of stationing direct. Because any planet that's there, or whatever house it's in, that area of your life may take more of a center stage during this week, and then will also continue to build throughout the rest of the year. I'm really curious to see how things play out too, because this Jupiter stationing direct, it's now starting to move towards the square with Pluto. Pluto's at about 18 degrees in Capricorn, like we said earlier. And so even though 13 to 18 degrees, Jupiter 13 degrees in Libra and Pluto at 18 degrees Capricorn, that seems like seems like it's far away. But just this point where Jupiter's like, okay, I'm going forward. I see you, Pluto, like I'm coming for you. It's building up to this energy of expanding on Plutonian themes, which are about power and control and unveiling shadow material, discovering the unconscious. And so that happens around August, when that's exact. So I just want to plant the seed now for really exploring where you do go overboard, where you indulge a little bit more, and or where you do need to expand more, where it's time to expand and to be big and to take up more space, etc.
Well, I love that you tied that into the Pluto square that's coming up, because like I was just saying, Libra, yes, it's partnerships. It's the open enemies. It's also the shadow aspect to yourself. Mm-hmm. So here we are getting a nice square. Never said that before. But here we are getting a wonderful square to Pluto, which is going to activate that reappraisal and letting go of our own shadow self, and which I think is going to be easier because did Jupiter made it all the way to square Pluto before it did?
Yeah,
so I'm pretty sure it did. So this is its last pass. So we've learned something. Mm-hmm. This is the last challenge in that area, and this is probably why we've spent since February, going in and reevaluating our own philosophies and our own life's values and what our own key to our inner faith and our spiritual side. We've been working on this internally, and we've been trying to keep the faith, and it's been an internal struggle in a sense that we've been going through. So I think that having this trigger, now that we go direct, and we're deeming it a return to faith. Like, we can go forward in life out in the open with a faith in ourselves now, and more of a grounded stance on our own spiritual side and our purpose and our meaning. Because, like we were saying with Saturn and Sagittarius, is we've been working on this. Between Saturn and Sagittarius and Uranus in Aries and Venus hanging out with Uranus in Aries, we have been working on our, finding a new personality for ourselves and like really stepping into our own purpose. And within that, we have to shed away old skins of ourselves so that we can embrace these this new personality that we now have. And so I feel that this is just another little, this is kind of like one of the last things in my mind that will trigger that going forward, because it's going forward, where it's growth, it's expansion. So now we can take that, what we've learned about ourselves and our new approach at our own individuality and our own purpose, and put that out in the world so that it's more tangible growth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just a little tidbit for everyone, too, the first square of Jupiter to Pluto in this cycle was November 24th, 2016. So it may just be interesting to notice like what was happening and all of that. And at that time, it was Jupiter square Pluto with Venus conjunct Pluto. So that might have been...
That's what I was going to say. That's the same
interesting little,
our previous podcast. Look at that. Not funny how that works.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is, so that happened, and then, not to belabor this too much, but Jupiter went, as we said, it went retrograde in February and moved off. So it got into Pluto business, and then it moved away. So there may have been like this intensity around late November last year, and then a bit of a relief through... especially through April and May, the bulk of May, and then it's going to start to get intense towards the summer again. So, but it, like you said, Mel, it's kind of like, we're like, okay, I know these issues. I know these issues of expanding on shadow material and I know what they are. And so I'm prepared to deal with them and that kind of thing. So.
What's interesting that just popped in my mind now that you refreshed our memory about Venus conjuncting Pluto and beginning that Venus-Pluto cycle that day, is that, let's not forget that Jupiter is in Libra. It's partnerships.
I
know. So this whole, that was basically setting us up for a cycle in my mind of, evaluating, like, it's like reconnecting with our own idealism in partnerships and how we I might ideally like to control certain things, and have certain things at our disposal. And we just had that Venus-Uranus conjunction, and then a few weeks earlier we had the Venus square Pluto in our first test there. So I think and I can speak for myself personally, as I've gained a lot of knowledge since February internally about how I deal with other people. And when I'm being idealistic in a situation, and when I'm being more realistic on how to make that relationship work. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and that reminds me of how Jupiter so much can bring the rose-colored glasses, for better or for worse. And I have a really strong Jupiter natally, and so I know that about myself. Like, I know that I love to see the best in people, and that's a good thing until it's not.
Yeah,
so
right?
That may be something to just explore. And I think, reflections for this Jupiter stationing direct, I think it is positive to look back on, like you're talking about, Mel, where have things shifted? Where have things changed for you especially around relationships and how you interact with other people, whether that's friendship or romance or even people that challenge you?
Yeah. Because we're essentially, with it going direct and what we were just talking about back in November, we're reliving the future. Mm-hmm. We're like reliving the future we've already lived in a sense, but we have a higher mindset now. We've done the work. We've gone internal and wrapped our mind around, these relationship and relating issues that may have been going on. And so because we've had this introspection, hopefully we can like align ourselves with our higher mind now, because at the end of the day, can you justify yourself to you? Because, that's really the question here, is like how you treat other people and go about, and how you treat yourself and et cetera. If you like, because we like to argue a good point and like justify certain things, but when it's all said and done and you're talking to yourself, you know the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know the truth. You can convince yourself otherwise for how long, but so we've all been learning to, get behind being able to actually justify our own selves to ourselves, so that we're in integrity with our relationships. And now that we've done this self-work, we can expand and unfold that Aries personality and how that relates with our Jupiterian, outside friendships and relationships and, all that.
And Mel, as we're talking, I'm remembering that one of the tarot cards that we have for this particular transit is the Wheel of Fortune. And that just seems so appropriate for exactly what we're talking about, like everything, going out and then coming back into like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And now it's like, all right, I'm going to take this into the world. And, tell us more about that.
Talk about that tarot.
Yeah.
So for Jupiter stationing direct, like Shawna was saying, our focus is a Wheel of Fortune, and the grounding is the Seven of Cups. So just to touch more about the Wheel of Fortune is, essentially it's a cycle. The wheel goes up, the wheel goes down. The wheel goes up, the wheel goes down. And here we are talking about these cycles and this retrograde cycle that we just went through and all that we've kind of learned, and that squaring with Pluto and that energy with Venus, and et cetera, et cetera. And here we are back on that cycle. And I'm feeling like that wheel is up for the most part, for most of us. So, with the Wheel of Fortune, it's about bringing us, once again, in that Jupiter Sagittarius realm, it's bringing us closer to our own purpose. When the wheel turns, something happens that just gets us closer to where we need to be. Whether that's on the good side of things or the bad side of things, because if you're going down the wrong path, that wheel's going to turn and be like, hello, redirect over here.
Redirect.
Redirect. So to pair it with that seven of cups is that, because the Seven of Cups is all about all these choices and idealism. We're just getting in touch with where we could be more on the ideal side of our relationships, or how we ideally like to see things pictured, when really they're just not that way. I think you said in our first episode, Shawna, you want your integrity to look a certain way, but you know what? It doesn't. It looks this way. And so I feel like we're getting, that retrograde cycle might have triggered some type of confusion inside. Like we might have all spent the last few months since February kind of battling with some type of confusion or uncertainty, and kind of trying to find a balance between what we dream and what we're actually doing. So I feel like there's might have been several options on our plate during this time, but now the wheel kind of is turning to really point us in the direction of real opportunity, so that those choices kind of fade. It's not that they fade away. We have that, but sometimes we need a little pointer saying, okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. Go there. And it wraps up that confusion so that we know what our best option and our opportunity is.
Yeah, and I'm really blown away by how appropriate the Seven of Cups is for Jupiter, because Jupiter doesn't want to throw away any opportunities. Jupiter is all inclusive. Jupiter's like, everyone is welcome. Everyone come to the party. I'm going to do everything. It's like, yes, I'm down for all of it. And the Seven of Cups totally shows this. It shows the 7 different cups with all of these different treats and surprises. And, it's like, yes, all of the things. Yeah, and it's enticing, and it's very like seductive too. But when I think of the Seven of Cups, I think of, yes, like there's all of these options, but some are more appropriate than others, and that goes to the Wheel of Fortune. And so, I think the Jupiter stationing direct, there is like this element of having lots of possibilities, and with it being retrograde for so long, it makes me think of like all of these possibilities kind of being like weighed and looked at and coming up, bubbling up from the inside. And so now we get to choose. Now it is time to have to balance that Jupiterian energy to decide, okay, which one am I going to act on? Which one am I going to follow? And the more that you can direct yourself, the more that you can choose and focus on what's most important, the more successful you'll be.
Exactly, because, like you said with the card, is that here we have this person looking at all these options in the air. Mm-hmm. So I feel that, with Jupiter going direct here, is that we're actually no longer up in the air. Things are not up in the air any longer, and we're going to be able to make progress now, because that wheel is going to point us in the right place, or it might put us in the right place at the right time. And there could be a bit of luck that happens that kind of just points us in the right direction. And just know, if for some reason that you're not experiencing the luck or the good karma, and you're kind of at the bottom of the wheel, a lot of times that's kind of, reaping what you've sown, and it's just you just working off some karma. We all have karma. We're all, working it off and then getting some, there's, mm-hmm. So just get in touch with any lingering illusions that you might have, in that area, so that you can get that wheel on the right side of things. For this transit, I would say. And I find it very interesting that the Wheel of Fortune was also my tarot focus card for my Sun in Gemini video on YouTube, when I for the whole month. And I'm doing it for the whole month, so I don't quite know how it triggers. But now I see it's triggered, it's the full moon that's the trigger. So, I find that very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune! Oh, all right. Jupiter stationing direct. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you to take away on, just to kind of ask yourself, and go inward and get a little insight into your own Jupiter progress. So I would ask, how have I spiritually progressed since February? What avenues can I now expand to bring new opportunities in my life? I would ask, how can I use the rest of this year to grow my dreams into reality? And then lastly, I would ask, where can I work with others to facilitate my own growth and our growth as a team?
I love that last one. That's so perfect for the Libra element as well.
Exactly, because we can talk about Jupiter going direct all day, but the key to that is the fact that it's in Libra. That's the energy that's going direct.
Yeah.
So work with your others. Play nice, work well.
Yeah, play well together.
Yes. All right. So our last transit that we'll be talking about in this episode, that will also be happening on our Freaky Friday, June 9th, is Venus sextile Mars, which we are deeming Act Your Heart Out. And that will be exact at 8:41 a.m. Pacific time, and it will be at 3 degrees Taurus and 3 degrees Taurus Venus, sextile Mars at 3 degrees Cancer. So Shawna, tell us the quote you have for this aspect.
So this quote is from Maya Angelou. She's was an American poet and a civil rights activist, and one of my favorite people. She's amazing. So this quote, she says, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I love this particularly for Venus sextile Mars, because Venus is all about feeling and emotion and relationships, and it's our sense of connection to one another, while Mars is about action. And so it's quite perfect for this acting your heart out. And I think that this aspect is really, it's an opportunity for taking all of the insights that have come to your heart and the way that you're feeling, and to doing something with that, to making that practical in the Mars way.
Well, I really love that quote, A, because it's Maya Angelou, but B, because, being a musician myself, and obviously having tons of musician friends and looking at lots of musician and artist charts, is that I see Venus sextile Mars all the time, natally, in artists and musicians. And here you are, people will never forget how you made them feel. And what does art and music do? It gets you in touch with feeling. Like, we might not even know what the singer's saying, but the way that the music moves, it just touches us in the heart, and it'll like raise the hair on our arms, and it connects us with the way we feel. So I think that's a beautiful quote, relating this Venus sextile Mars. Because this is the thing, is that, I see lots of artists with this aspect in their own chart. Usually I see it in a conjunction or a sextile, sometimes in a trine, but the most I've seen it is a sextile. And I think that's a very interesting thing, because sextiles are it's a harmony energy, but it's not like the trine where it's integrated and it's ready to work and it's just kind of happening. Sextiles, you have to work for it. It's an opportunity. It's not a guarantee. You have to choose to activate that energy. So here we are choosing to act our heart out. The only way we're going to be able to do that is actually get behind ourselves and utilize that energy. Especially since here, keep in mind, we are talking about the same day. Everything that we've talked about in this podcast is happening on the same day. So how does this Venus sextile Mars relate to our Jupiter station and our Sagittarius full moon? Well, once again, we're talking about Venus with balance, and sextile, which is harmony. So let's choose to work from a balanced, harmonious place. We have to actively choose that, because, with Mars and Cancer, keep in mind, Venus is strong. Venus is now in Taurus and is like, oh yeah, that's my sign. I'm just going to hang out. Feeling sexy. And our Jupiter station in Libra is also ruled by Venus. So Venus is pumped this day. And Mars, who's now in Cancer, is in its fall, and it's a harder energy to work with. And where that Mars and Cancer can become difficult is it actually kind of gets aggressive emotionally around certain things, where, like a lot of times you might find the people that go out on a limb of their own like patriotic, righteousness in a sense, probably have Mars in Cancer because they're pumped up about their homeland and, and so that kind of ties into that whole full moon in Sagittarius too. So just know that Mars in its fall in Cancer, might be acting out in that area. But we're going to choose to look on the harmonious and balanced side of things, since Venus is so strong, in Taurus and with Jupiter going direct in Venus's other sign, Libra. So we're going to hope that harmony rules the day on Friday.
Yeah. And you know what really comes to mind for me is this aspect, it does require engagement. Because like you were saying, Mel, the sextile, it's not like it just happens. It's not that easy. Like it is easy, but you have to take the action. It's not just going to be handed to you on a plate. Like you might have to go in the kitchen and do a little something. And I think that's magnified even more with Mars being in its fall in the sign of Cancer. And so all that means is that, the Mars energy of doing an action, it does require engagement. It requires you to do the thing that you need to do. And only you know what that is for yourself. But it may have a Cancerian kind of vibe. I happen to have Mars in Cancer natally. And so I know from experience that this can manifest as, not wanting to act and then feeling emotionally overwhelmed. And then it comes out like in a burst, an emotional burst.
Yeah.
But so it requires though, that you say, okay, I'm going to actively do something about this. And the more that you do that, the better you get at it. The higher side of Mars and Cancer is like that mama bear kind of energy where it's like super emotionally engaged and really standing up for what is right and in a very almost protective kind of way, like in a very nurturing kind of way.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it requires that we do something. And so I think all of the energy this week that we've been talking about too is saying, okay, what are you going to do now with what it is that you have? And so I think this week in general is not a time to sit back and to be complacent. It's a time to act from integrity.
Yes, absolutely. Act. Mm-hmm. Choose to take the opportunity to act in integrity and to act in harmony and balance.
And the cool thing is that when you do so, you'll be rewarded. I mean, that beautiful, the Venus being in Taurus, it's like Taurus is all about security and material abundance. And so it's like there's, when you do the hard Mars thing that maybe you don't want to do, then you get something for it, either emotionally or literally.
Yeah. Especially Jupiter stationing that day, there's some progressive power there and some more lucky, things going on. But what I found super interesting actually was the tarot cards for this transit. And what I got the Wheel of Fortune again. After I've shuffled 5 million times. I mean, I love to shuffle. I can shuffle all day. My grandma paid me $10 to learn how to shuffle when I was like 5. I'm a shuffler. And so here we got the Wheel of Fortune again, paired with the 8 of Cups as our grounding, which I found absolutely fascinating, not only because we got the Wheel of Fortune again, but the fact that it's grounded by the 8 of Cups, which was actually our focus card in Venus conjuncting Uranus in our last episode. So here we are, we're following Venus's journey. Because this is the next big aspect that she makes after that Venus conjunct Uranus. So you might even tie that into, what you're activating at this time, because it could have something to do with that conjunction. But, here we are just reinforcing that, things are looking up. And how I love to look at this with, because we're obviously talking about different energies than Jupiter station, versus Venus sextile Mars, is that I kind of look at this personally as a second chance in relating. I feel like if you've blown some type of opportunity, you might get another chance to work from the higher place that we're talking about right now, because this is all blending together. We might have to sacrifice certain aspects of ourselves recently so that we can have more meaningful partnerships. So just know that this opportunity is grounded basically on, that work that we did of letting go, our repetitive emotional habits and allowing for, new opportunities to relate. So that's kind of how I look at these cards personally, which I find very interesting. And I feel like this day has just really a karmic nature to it. The Wheel of Fortune twice. Wheel up. Well, you know how that goes. But,
and I love how it really does follow Venus. And, I wonder if on this day, this week, there is this element of putting into practice something that was revealed or that came about in the last week. So we had Venus conjunct Uranus on June 3rd. And so, I wonder if there's like an awakening or a realization that happened that week that now we get to do something about it. We get to Mars take action on what it was that came to us. And, or, there was something that we let go of, and now we get to reinforce that in some way, to say yes or to say no in a more practical manner.
I like that. Because we're talking about Venus and, sextiling Mars, and here I was talking about, having so many friends, artists and musicians with this aspect, this is actually a great time to kind of, if you've got any creative project going on, there can be a boost absolutely at this time, or you might say you had obstacles before and now you're finding new creative partners to work with, because here that Jupiter's going direct in Libra, so it might bring some people to you that will help facilitate that, so that you can activate that energy. Because keep in mind, this is an opportunity, not a guarantee. You have to actively activate this. But I think it's a wonderful, it's got a lot of promise, to it, I think. Because I think we've all kind of sacrificed a lot of, of our own self recently, or not even because we wanted to, because the outside world is like, guess what? You just can't do that. You just can't have that anymore. You just what you're doing is not working, and you just have to let that go. And so now that we've done that, we're starting to see more opportunity in that area. So I was very intrigued by this card.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I love that tie to musicianship. And what's really cool about this week that I'm thinking of now is it's like, you, a musical or any kind of artistic talent, it may come naturally with something like this. But you have to work at it. You have to practice, and you have to put yourself out there too. And it makes me think of our full moon in Sagittarius sitting with Saturn. Saturn helps us do that. So it feels as though there's a lot of support here when we do engage, that there is this solid foundation that we're building as we engage with it.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. Well, so let's see. I have a couple questions for this Venus sextile Mars on our Freaky Friday, June 9th. So this is what I would ask myself. I would ask, how am I choosing to activate harmony in my life? I would ask, where do I now have an opportunity to pursue my creative pursuits? I would ask, does a relationship in your life need a second chance? And then lastly, I would say, where do you sense areas in your life that can benefit from your own assertion, which in turn will help you nurture what you're trying to manifest? So I would I'm going to wrap my own brain around those questions when the time's right, because I think there's a lot of insight to be gained. This is a powerful week. This is a culmination week of sorts for this Gemini cycle. So let's all use it to our best advantage, Like this is power, underlying power that we get to choose to use. So let's choose to use it appropriately. And for the benefit, not only for ourselves, but for others.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Amen to that.
All right, so let's wrap it up. We have talked it out here. What have we learned, Shawna? What have we learned?
What have we learned? Oh my gosh.
What haven't we learned? My goodness.
Too. Holy cow. So to wrap it up here, clearly Friday this week is a big day. And, I don't want anyone to be nervous about that. I think that there's a huge theme here around having faith and like having faith in relationships too, and like the nature of relationships, and that with the Wheel of Fortune thing going on this whole week too, is like you will always be redirected and you will always be taken care of. And at the same time, how do we engage in a way that is healthy and honest and authentic?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
those are the big questions of this week.
I'd love to leave everyone with a little action item for this week too, like something to take away that's practical to tie all of this in. So what I would say, if there's something that you want to do to anchor all of this, if there's something else that you've come up with, that's awesome. Do that. But what I think would be really sweet for this week is to do a ritual on this Friday, on the full moon day. And it can be anything that you want, but choose something symbolic to represent what it is that you want to engage with this week. So, if you want to bring more ease into your relationships, or if you want to bring more material success into your life, what's a symbolic thing that you can do? Whether that is journaling about what it is that your vision is, or to light a little candle and to say a little prayer. Anything that feels good to say to the universe, this is what I want and this is what I'm going towards.
Yes. Get your intention out there. The universe needs to know. It doesn't, you have to intend. Otherwise, the messages get mixed and life throws things at you. So the clearer you can get with your own focus and your own intention and your own faith, because here we are, we're returning to our own faith, mostly in ourselves. And with that faith in ourselves, we are able to have faith in others. So there's your food for thought. So I hope that, for this week, we're, June 5th through June 11th, just ask yourself, how can I have a higher vision? How can I return to my own faith? And how can I act my heart out?
Love it.
And that is what we will leave you with. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Just a quick little, get it out there. If you want to find out more about, either myself or Shawna, you can find me at, energeticprinciples.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Energetic Principles, where I do daily updates on the astrological weather. You can tune in and see what's happening, and see my fun little pictures I make. And I have YouTube videos up as well for your perusal. And Shawna, where can they find you?
You can find me at neofeminine.com. and on Instagram as well, Neo Feminine Astrology. And yeah, if anyone wants to go, if you want to go a little deeper into any of these issues, or if you're having a challenge, you're trying to make a decision, it can be so helpful to look at where all of these transits are happening for you personally. So where it's activating your chart, and it helps to understand what that means for you and how to proceed. So if that's something that you want help with, either Mel or I would love to help you with that.
Yes, because we read the charts just like we read the weather. We read the charts and can give you a more personal take on what it is that we're talking about and how that relates to you. Mm-hmm. So we are available, either one of us, if you want to reach out. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful week. We're both sending you lots of love. Right, Shawna?
Yes.
All the love. All the love. And hopefully you'll laugh like we do through this week and all these transits. So we thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.